All right, I'm sitting here with Greg Thompson, the drummer for Zoso. He's been in the band for quite a while and entertained many people all over. What kind of drums are you playing, and describe your setup?
I'm using a Ludwig Amber Visalite, which was currently used by John Bonham back in the mid-70s before he switched to the stainless steel kit. And basically what it is basically a plexiglass. It's a plexiglass drum kit made out of 1/4 inch plexiglass acrylic plastic, and it was made to produce a lot of volume at close range. And they were when they were mic'd live, they would sound unbelievable. And I use the same configuration with the big oversized kick drum and the 16 and 18 floor tom, pretty much exactly what to the T what he used live.
Are those in production, those kind of drums still, or do you
Ludwig puts out the reissue kit, which is somewhat like it, except for the bass drum is virgin, which means there's no mounting hardware on the top, and the rack tom is mounted by a snare basket, which is not good in my opinion, because then you don't get the overall sound of the tom, and it gets stifled and muffled because you got that basket underneath. So when the sound is being driven through with the stick, it's got nowhere to go except for down, and it kind of gets lost. And it's a lot better when it's kind of free floating, moving, by itself rather than being subdued in one area by a snare drum stand. I don't like it. I don't prefer it, but that's Ludwig's patent.
And you've been talking about tuning the drums. You wanted to describe how that works?
I'm horrible at tuning. I really am. My sound engineer and sometimes drum guru, Jay Randall, who runs our sound for our audio for our performance night after night, he's very good at tuning, and we used to get in arguments all the time about what sounded the best and what worked live, and we came to an agreement that I'm not as good as he is tuning. It's a difficult task. I mean, Bonham couldn't tune either, so that's why he had a drum tech and a drum roadie to do all the stuff for him. But he didn't like anybody touching his drum kit. Once he liked what he liked, then he made sure that the drum tech would match what he liked. So even though he couldn't tune, he knew exactly what sound he wanted. And I'm the same way. I know what sound I want, and the sound basically comes from the big band jazz era with Buddy Rich and Miles Davis and stuff like that. The big oversized drums, and the reason why they made those drums so big is to get over all the brass instruments and the woodwind instruments, because they didn't have microphones back then, except for a square mic that they used for talking in, and the word PA stood for public address. So it was made for speeches, not to put on a big rock and roll show until more amplified instruments came out in the later 50s and on, moving forward.
So was John Bonham a big influence on you getting into drumming as a kid, or is it something you picked up later or when you joined the band?
I really didn't get the grasp of what John Bonham as a drummer, a phenomenal drummer, one of the best rock drummers in the world in my opinion. Now there's the best drummer in the world, which is Buddy Rich, and then there's the best rock drummer in the mid 70s was John Bonham, and I thought the best 80s rock drummer was Neil Peart. So there's definitely plateaus of drummers, but there's no drummers today that can't even match what Bonham did back then. I mean, I try every night, and sometimes I get close, but there's no matching Bonham. Bonzo was just a phenomenal bombastic, very improvisational, off the cuff kind of drummer. Not like Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich was very, very articulate in his playing, and Buddy could do anything, and nobody, I mean, there's not one drummer out there that can even match a third of what Buddy Rich can do. But Bonham came pretty close to that Joe Morello, Buddy Rich, because those were his two biggest influences. Bonham would learn how to use the fundamental approach on using his hands to get certain sounds off the toms and the snare when he was playing with his hands, and that's exactly what Joe Morello would do. And then Buddy Rich would be using his approach to drumming with a jazz grip, which would be traditional grip, and playing rolls and playing musical expressions that no drummer could ever comprehend of what he was doing.
Was Buddy Rich an influence to you as a kid or in your adult era?
I think Buddy Rich was an influence to everybody when they were a kid as far as drummers were concerned. I mean, I had posters of Buddy Rich on my wall when I was growing up.
You boys, y'all got shit! Ain't no chicken in here! Damn it! Where's the fucking chicken?
So, I hope that part gets erased.
Yeah, we're not going to put in unflattering shit, but I also am not going to sit here trying to stop and start and go backwards while someone fucks around, you know?
So, basically, Buddy Rich, I always wanted to be Buddy Rich, you know, when I was a kid, looking at the posters, the Ludwig posters and the Zildjian symbol, and his setup, seeing him on the Muppet Show when I was 9 years old.
There's Cripple in here?
Man, what?
We smell chicken.
Can you give me
You
some
smell the
privacy?
chicken? Dude, there's chicken somewhere.
smell
Who's
it.
got the
I smell
chicken?
it.
What's wrong
I don't
with you?
interrupt your interview, do I?
What interview? Oh, this your interview? How come Ant's not in here?
I smell chicken.
Chicken, run chicken down here. Run chicken.
You got chicken in here? Nothing Joe
Nancy,
touch.
come in here.
Thanks for interrupting. Appreciate it.
Why? You're having an interview and I'm not in it? Can you start this over?
Unbelievable.
Unfucking believable. Do you believe the treatment they give this guy? God.
Oh man, you guys destroyed my concentration. Thanks, I appreciate it.
I didn't do shit. I just walked in here.
You should have said, Greg's probably doing an interview.
I couldn't control all that. All I do is jump in front of people that try to punch you. That's all I can do.
Oh, I can handle myself.
I got here as fast as I could.
I don't know. Love you anyway. Where was I?
We were talking about your influences into what got you into drumming, whether Buddy Rich was a childhood influence, and who were as well.
What got me into drumming was Kiss. At 5 years old, 6 years old, and then when I got a little older, I got into more of the classic rock bands, and then I heard Zeppelin for the first time, and that was after John Bonham had already died. I didn't really know who he was, and then when I went back and listened to the albums, and went back and listened to the performances, and I saw The Song Remains the Same on video, I was like, wow, amazing. And all my friends were telling me, you know, you kind of play like him. You kind of have that natural groove like him. And once I've learned everything by ear. I'm not classically trained or technically trained or musically trained. I just picked up the sticks and, you know, went at it. So I guess I cop a lot of the natural influence that John Bonham had, you know, as far as my playing live performance. I kind of copy his essence, his spirit. I kind of channel his spirit, you know, which is a good thing. Not too many drummers can pull that off well.
Especially since it's the gig you're doing. It's your main assignment.
Yeah, very demanding.
Do you know when you've got it and when you don't?
Yeah, there's nights where I feel like, you know, like if there's anything that slightly can go wrong, you know, like if I drop a stick or something mechanically fails on my kit, you know, which if I tighten, sometimes I don't have time to tighten everything down, but if something happens where, you know, a cymbal stand collapses or a floor tom leg collapses, I got to be ready and be ahead of the game before that happens, because if I take a second to take away from my concentration, it's a lot like, you know, I guess it would be a lot like riding a motorcycle, even though I've never rode one. You kind of got to know when to take that turn before that turn comes up, Otherwise, you're in big trouble. Well, it's the same thing when you're playing on a drum kit or any instrument. You got to know where you're going to be before you make that next turnaround. Because if your concentration is slightly distracted in any way, it's over. And there's no second chance live. You only get one take. So it's not like you're in the studio saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and do that again. You only get one shot live. So if you drop a stick, I always try to make sure I can recover by playing a one-handed drum lick and then grab the stick. You know, most drummers will stop, oh, let's start over, or they'll just sit there and look off into space. I try to recover. I try to make it to where only I notice that I missed it, but once in a while, you know, you'll catch me, you know, where on a bad night where I can't concentrate anymore because I got so many failures going on around me, and it ruins the vibe. So it's very important to always know where you're at all times before something like that would happen to distract you, because once you're distracted, that's it, it's pretty much over.
Now on the other side of the coin, a good night, you've got to be feeling that, the energy coming off your co-mates in the band or the crowd, you know. And
yeah, absolutely. Some nights where I'm completely enamored, you know, I'll look at my bandmates and I'm seeing, you know, John's back to me or Matt's back to me, and I'll see like some smiles coming off of each other, you know, and I'll look back and, you know, I'll say to myself, you know, like almost having like an outer body experience. It's like, wow, I feel like, you know, this is like, we're like Led Zeppelin. We're actually playing Madison Square Garden because the crowd participation, the lights, the setting, the mood, the enhancement of the music, the sound that we're getting, the camaraderie on stage, just everything fits like a puzzle. And when it does, it's fantastic. And when it doesn't, it's not good.
do you think it's not good from your guys' perspective more so than the people seeing the show? Do they still come away happy that they saw?
Yeah, I don't think anybody is watching for the analytical approach that we have on stage. When we're on stage, we're thinking about the show, and when the audience is watching us, it's more like they're just watching the show. So it's a little different. It's a little different to where we're more anal live than the audience is going to be critiquing us.
Right, the director wants me in tighter.
Director wants it tighter.
What's going on?
I want it tighter.
I had the other shot for a while. I liked
Okay.
getting the
You like
mirror
the
shot,
Uh-huh.
so I was doing that for a little bit.
Oh, that's cool.
Is it still on?
Yeah, we're still
still
going.
rolling? Okay.
Yeah, we're not cutting you off. We're not cutting you off.
Did you need me?
You got any questions you want to throw at?
Yeah. You know what always puzzled me when they talked about the timing on good times, bad times, but I don't know what they're talking about. So what's the difference that he got from, was it cream or vanilla fudge? He got the timing from the drummer, Bonzo got the timing from the drummer, from...
Speaking, like if I was giving a clinic, like how would I explain the timing on good times, bad times, or
What's different about it?
Or what's
Yeah, what are they talking about it when they say, that, oh, that was so fantastic, and how did he do that?
or what's the song about? What do you?
How the drum beat in that song differs. Now, why does everybody make a fuss over it?
Oh well, because it's one of the recorded, famous recordings of Bonham's fast foot technique, where he rolls his bass drum, and it's so fast that not too many drummers can pull that off with one foot. And when they do pull it off, it sounds like they're trying to put more into it than what is normal, that kind of aspect. So when I'm not perfect at doing it either, because it's more of a stutter when John does it. It's more of a syncopated roll when I do it. But I try to do it as best way that I possibly can, But yeah, that's the famous double fill on his Ludwig Speed King pedal, which in those days didn't have a lot of pullback, so there was not a lot of resistance. You would have to physically go underneath the pedal and turn the screws to bring the pedal back to you, and whatever you would give it, it would come back, but you had to kick it really hard to bring back the rebound on it. So it's not like a chain driven where it comes back to you automatically. So it was a lot harder to get a roll off of your foot like that.
Yeah.
And that's all I used to use when I was a kid. So I got really used to those pedals.
That was good. Do you use that now as well then?
No, I get a DW.
Okay.
But I'm sure Bono would be using DW pedals too. They had a reputation for breaking a lot, and I broke a lot of them.
Yeah. Do you use the same size sticks? And
I try to use the same size sticks. Promuco is not around anymore, and I think Promuco went to Promark. I think Promark bought out Promuco, but I try to use the sticks that I think that he would use. But I don't want to use if he used big, heavy tree trunk sticks. I wouldn't want to use those because I would go through my heads and cymbals a lot quicker. So I'm thinking, there's a misconception about the kind of sticks he used because I don't think when they referred to tree trunks, I think those are big sticks for a non-normal drummer, and Bonham was a rock drummer, and most drummers back then would use like 5A, 2B, which is a lot thinner. Mm-hmm. So when you use the bigger sticks, I mean, there's a guy that I know in Florida that uses DC-10s, and those are marching drumsticks. They're really, really thick, and that's what he uses to play live with. And I'm like, how come you don't go through your cymbals and your heads? Because I would go through them, and he hits just as hard as I do, and I couldn't use it. It would slow me down. But like a person who was, trying out for the triathlon or doing a running course, would work out with ankle weights, and then ready to do the performance, they would take the ankle weights off because it built up their stamina so much that it's kind of the same thing. So I would want to practice with big sticks, and then when I play live, probably play them a little thinner. Mm-hmm. Then I could probably move a little bit more freely.
Mm-hmm. And the timing in Bonham was unique, and sometimes it differed from the timing of the instruments. And do you find that challenging? And
I find it perplexing because Bonham had a kind of tight but loose kind of feel. He was kind of under the beat, just under a hair, but it was so relaxed to where it almost felt like he was losing the timing. But I found out that listening to more drummers trying to play to Zeppelin would play on top of the beat, and he kind of played slightly under the beat, giving him more of a relaxed kind of essence feel to it.
And is that how you play naturally, or was that hard for you?
I tried to play just a slight hair under the beat, so it doesn't force myself to rush. And I have a tendency to rush when I'm playing live because you got the adrenaline flowing through you got the excitement, you got the crowd, mm-hmm. you got the monitors, you got everybody feeding back off you, and sometimes it's difficult to pull back. Sometimes my singer has to go to me and go, bring it down a little bit, mm-hmm. a little too fast. So I'm always checking myself.
That was indicative of Bonham as well.
I'm sure.
They had to rein him in many times.
I'm sure they had to tell him to bring it down a little bit. He was playing a little too fast. I'm very not defensive in my playing because I know how good I am, but I'm very critical on what I play, and I want to make sure that it's a beat that Bonham would have done or very close to what he had done.
Did you ask him about his last question?
Do you have anything to say to what would you like to say to the Zoso fan base?
The Zoso fan base. Thank you for so many years for supporting us. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be where we are today. And if it wasn't for Led Zeppelin, we wouldn't be where we are today. So thank you to the fans that have always supported us through the years and have kept up by coming time and time again, supporting us, seeing the shows, paying the money. And this is where we are today, so we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Jeff?
Any questions we have left unasked?
Any questions that are unanswered?
Well, there's plenty of those ones you would have liked to address.
We get a lot of people that that are mesmerized by our show's performance, that truly believe that they just witnessed another creation of Led Zeppelin, which is a great compliment to us. People tell me, you know, if Bonham was alive, you know, he'd give you a hug or buy you a drink, or, you know, that's a big compliment, you know, for him. And there's people out there that really critique our show, and we get a lot of I get a lot of kids, you know, how do you play like that? I want to learn how to play like that. So everybody out there that wants to learn how to play like John Bonham, practice your rudiments, practice your timing. Don't try to take in too much too soon, and if you start at a slow pace and you develop dexterity and speed, and you have an ear for it, and you have an ability to pick things out real quick, it will show up in your playing many years to come. And I'm trying to do clinics, John Bonham clinics, and I want to put out some DVDs on how to play certain Bonham type fills. So that's going to help too, because people can actually go out and get the DVD and watch it, and if they like it, they pay money, and, you know, I don't want to give away all my secrets.
No. Something just from a vinyl geek perspective, because that's how I started out, was buying records. What was your first album you went out to buy because you wanted it?
My first album that I went out to buy when I bought it?
Yeah,
Wow,
you wanted.
You know, I think I remember being at 12 or 13 years old and taking my Huffy Cruiser and riding 4 miles, going over the interstate, going through because I grew up in Southern California, where we had a lot of, we had the drainage ditch. And that was the quickest way to bypass the freeway, because the freeway was too dangerous. And I lived in Los Alamitos, and the nearest record store was in Cerritos. So that was a good 20-minute, ride on a bike. So I would try to find shortcuts, even though they were a pain in the butt to get to. And I found myself buying my first album, and I think the first album that I actually bought, and was for $5.99 or $6.99, was AC/DC's Back in Black. One of my favorite albums, still one of my favorite albums today. And I couldn't wait, because I had it in my hand, I was riding my bike, and when I got home, it had that smell, you know, that smell when you open up the jacket, and that nice, you know, packaged smell, and it just said AC/DC. It was just black, and it was real reflective. So, you know, anytime when I go back and watch the movie Spinal Tap, when they say, well, this album is black, it says nothing, it's just the album cover. It reminds me of Metallica's Black Album, or AC/DC's Back in Black album. All it was just a black imprint of AC/DC logo and nothing else on it, you know, except for the back that showed the lineup of the songs. But even then, you know, from a distance, it looked like a black album. So it was very sellable item, and I remember it caught my eye, and I went out and bought it, and I wore that album out night and day for years, you know, until I got more albums, and my collection became a lot greater. But one of my first greatest heavy metal rock albums, that and Ozzy Osbourne's Diary of a Madman, are my 2 favorite albums that I bought.
Yeah, I don't think kids clicking and downloading get that smell very often.
No. See, and that's the thing about today's music is so repetitive and so mundane that every band sounds like the same other band. I can't tell Hinder from this band or that band or that band or that band, because they all sound the same. They all have that same cookie cutter cutout, you know. You know what it's going to taste. It's like a chocolate chip cookie. You know what it's going to taste like. You know it's going to be chocolate. You know it's going to have chips in it. But it's not going to separate itself from the better cookies that are out there. And that's the way I like to look at it from, you know, musicians. There are really good musicians out there, but today's music just don't hold what we had in the 70s or the 80s. That's why they're called classics. Then people put them down and they say, oh, well, those are oldies. Well, you know what? They're still playing on the radio. These bands playing today, they're not going to be on the radio next year. They're going to be a flash in the pan. They're going to be in and out. That's it. And they're going to not last the longevity of time.
Do you think we're going to end up with a lost generation of rock or music fans because the music that they're getting is so temporary, and they have no ownership in it, that they don't have to do what you just described, going to the record store. They don't get a chance to read liner notes and think about it.
Oh yeah, you know, I mean, it's nice that we have YouTube, and it's nice that we have internet, but I believe that the internet highway, as we call it, the wonderful world of Wi-Fi, has killed many ways to find out and get what you want by researching. Yes, YouTube is a great tool because now you can see and hear at a click of a button, where we had to go out and try to find bootlegs and listen to that performance, or try to find videotapes to watch that performance. So in that aspect, yes, it is a lot easier, and thank God that it's out there. But as far as researching and learning how to do something, it's too easy for the up and comers. It's more lazy. It's like getting your homework done on the computer rather than looking up the answers in your textbook. And it's the same thing with music. They think it's so easy to get a band together, but yet when they get out there, they find out it's a lot harder than it is. You have to pay your dues out there. You have to develop a fan base, and that's not just in your hometown. You could be a great sensation in your own backyard, but go out there in someone else's backyard and produce that following, and that's what separates the men from the boys, so to speak. And that's what Zoso had to do. We played colleges, we played, parties, we played really bars that we never even want to go back to. But we bit our tongue and we said, well, they're willing to pay us. We go in, we do 3-4 sets a night, and then move on to the next city. We had to pay our dues. We had to take a lot of flack from all these guys. Why are you guys doing a Led Zeppelin tribute? Zeppelin sucks. Well, then you're not a musician, because Zeppelin to me is one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time. And still today, these college kids are buying Led Zeppelin. We're packing houses of 1,500, 2,000 seaters. I think that says a lot for the longevity of this band, and it says the longevity of Led Zeppelin's career. Led Zeppelin's more popular than they ever were in the 70s, because now you got more push in today's world. You got more advertising. You got more radio. You got more internet. If it wasn't for internet, I don't think Zeppelin would be as popular as they are today. Everything was mail in your tickets and you get them in the mail, and yes, they sold out arenas, but if they had the internet back then, oh my God, they would sell out arenas 4 nights in a row, where they would just play 1 night or 2 nights. So I think that the computer age really helped out a lot of the older bands to come back, a resurgence. But I think it hindered a lot of the new bands, because it's the same old stuff that you hear on the radio today. So I don't think the new bands really know what good music is, because they're so busy in what's today and what's now, rather than what was yesterday and what I grew up on. So it's a double-edged sword. It really is, because when you're 13 and you're listening to what's out there, and Tool and 3 Doors Down and all these new bands, you're thinking that is the quality of music. But then you go back and you have your older brother say, no, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, The Stones, Rod Stewart and the Faces, Pink Floyd, Van Halen, all these bands that were back then that were our heroes. Nobody could touch them, because they had something that they offered that nobody could take away, and they had a standard sound that everybody was identifiable with. And today's music, you can't identify with one band to the other, and that's what's sad.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you think's good?
Did you get everything you wanted?
I'm good. All right.
Now, if you could play some of that back so I could see what I look like.
Sure. Let's see here. What do I do?